CirdecSongs and Make Weird Music are happy to welcome guitarist, musician, and overall innovator from Zurich, Switzerland, Stephan Thelen. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you, Cedric.
Excellent. How are things going in Switzerland these days?
Yeah, well, there's COVID numbers are rising very high, and we had, I think, 32,000 cases yesterday, and that's a lot for Switzerland because Switzerland is like 8 million people, so it's like 40 times less than America.
Right.
So 30,000 times 40, and then that's a lot more than a million. So,
right.
But that's what you have too, right? A million cases a day.
In that range, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Right,
Hopefully this Omicron variant is peaking and we're starting to get over it and what have you. We'll figure it out sooner or later. I'm just eager to get back out there and see people like you in concert again.
Yeah, we hope so.
Well, from what I can tell, 2021 was still a pretty productive year for you. Tell us about what all you've been doing.
Yeah, I must admit the last 2 years have been very productive, actually, because I've been home a lot and I had more time for music than I usually would have. So I did do a lot of things, and a lot of good things also happened, and I'm very grateful for. I mean, the way I work, it just fits very well with communicating via internet. I'm not the type of musician that, say, Marcus is, that Marcus Reuter is, who plays all the time with other people and performs all the time. I'm more the guy who works at home and composes and tries to put things together. So this mode of working was actually very good for me.
Excellent. I am a huge fan of the Fractal Guitar series, say that 5 times fast. It's some of the most innovative stuff that I've heard, and it's just magnificent. You have remixes of both of the first 2 albums. What led to the remixes?
The remixes actually that started with Anil Prasad. He wrote me an email one day, and he said that he met Bill Laswell, and that Bill would be interested in remixing Sonar. So he did 2 Sonar remixes, and that sort of started the connection that I have with Bill. I met him and then in New York a year later or so, and I think he likes my stuff, and so we got to know each other a little bit, and he offered to do more work. So the next was a Fractal guitar piece that he remixed, and also one for Fractal Guitar 2. So he's done 2 remixes for me personally as well, aside from Sonar.
Gotcha.
And that started it a little bit. And then when Fractal 2 was being put together, I had a lot of material that I couldn't use for the album, so I thought maybe I could do this as a remix. And I asked a couple of people. Jaw Wobble was somebody I also asked. He also did a remix, and David Thorn did a remix. Well, David Thorn didn't actually do a remix. He just did a mix where his part were a bit more upfront.
Right, makes sense. When you put your compositions together, do you have a specific sound in mind? Do you have a specific path that you want to take, or do you kind of let the other musicians augment as they will and then take it from there?
It kind of grows. I mean, I'll start somewhere without, knowing how the outcome will sound. I'll just start with some riff or an idea, and then I'll do something myself with that riff, and then I'll maybe send it to a few friends, and then I'll get input from them. And sometimes it takes a totally different direction. I mean, totally different, depending on who does what. Somebody will do a track which is so unexpected for me and will take everything in a new direction. So it sort of grows. I can't really say. There are pieces which I start and they stay pretty much the way I thought they would sound in the end, and others change completely. So it's really, I can't tell. It changes all the time.
Makes sense. And your Fractal guitar pieces are, I don't want to say night and day from Sonar, but there's definitely a lot more going on in terms of effects and what have you.
Right. Yeah. I think that was the original idea, that that I played it in Sonar for a long time. That was really the only thing I was doing for about 5 years or so. And I started missing, playing with effects and loops and all sorts of ambient kind of stuff. So I sort of started missing that, and that's how Fractal Guitar, the first album, was developed. I just started doing things with loops and soundscapes, and together with Marcus, that was. From the beginning, it was clear that we would do this a little bit together. I mean, it's my album, and I choose the pieces and have the final say on everything. But Marcus did a lot of work too, for both albums, and also for the next one.
You two make a pretty good compilation companionship here. Nice symbiotic circle you've got going there. What was the aha moment? When did you know you'd stumbled onto something new that you wanted to explore in terms of fractal guitar?
I don't know. It started with Marcus was in Zurich in 2014, and he offered that we could do something together, an album maybe or something. And so I started thinking about that, and I had 2 or 3 tracks which I didn't use for Sonar. I didn't propose to Sonar to play, so I started working on them individually, and it sort of grew out of that, out of these couple of pieces that I had at the time.
Nice. Are there any particular tracks that stick out in your mind? I know it's like trying to pick your favorite child, which you shouldn't do, but does one track stick out in your mind over the other, one or two, between the 2 albums?
It's really hard to say. I mean, every track I work really hard on and for a long time, and there's so much detail going on, and that takes a lot of work and a lot of time. So like you said, every track is like a baby, and it's hard to afterwards to say which track is particularly close to me. I would say probably, the Fractal Guitar 2, the second album, was for me personally was so much fun to make, and it happened so spontaneously, most of it. And for instance, there's this one track called Ladder to the Stars on Fractal 2.
Uh-huh.
And that started in a studio with Henry Kaiser when he was playing, and from the beginning, his solo was so crazy and so good that track was so much fun to make, and it just grew and grew and grew. And everybody I asked to play on did such a great job playing on it. So that's probably one of my favorites. Just when I listen to it today, it just has a resonance, but especially strong resonance.
Right. Excellent. Les, we think you have a one-track mind. There's also world dialogue out there, kind of a neoclassical. The compositions are definitely you. When I first played it, I said, now how am I going to know whether or not Stephan actually did this? And from the first 2 notes, yeah, that's him. Yeah. No question about that. Yeah. But tell us about how that came together.
That started, I think, let me see, it started in 2006 because I got a computer, I remember, with that had very good string sounds on it. So string quartet, I could play on my keyboard and it would sound like a string quartet, and that really inspired me because I've loved string quartets since I was a teenager. So I listened to very many string quartets, Bartók and Shostakovich and all these great classical composers who wrote string quartets. So I really loved the medium, and it sort of fit my style of playing as well. So I wrote a piece in 2006 which I really liked. It was a piece based on rhythmic ideas. Most of my pieces start with a rhythmic idea, and that was one too. And I sent it to Kronos because I thought that would be perfect for them to play that piece at the time. But I know today that Kronos gets like 50 tapes a day, 50 sound files a day from composers all over the world. So they can't possibly listen to everything that they get.
Right.
It's impossible. So I was lucky to have Anil, who knew David Harrington. Kronos is a violinist and creative director. And he said, well, I love this piece and it's perfect for them. I'll play it to him. So he did that for me, and that was the key that it worked. So Kronos, so David Harrington sent me an email and said he really liked the piece and we should meet, and which we eventually did. It took a long time, but we met in San Francisco. And then he said, well, I like the piece a lot, but actually I want you to write something new for us, especially for us. Yeah, Kronos wants people to write for them. Not just a piece of music, but really for them. So I did, and that's how that evolved. I enjoyed it very much playing with them, and we met for a rehearsal, and we also had a rehearsal online, and it was so much fun. I immediately composed another quartet, and then another. So I had 4 quartets, which I liked and thought would be a good album. And then I met a string quartet from Poland, 4 young women who play fantastically. So we eventually ended up recording an album with those 4 quartets.
Excellent, excellent. How long does it take to establish trust musically? When you've handed your composition over to, for example, these string quartets, how long does it take before you know that you've got the right people for your compositions?
Usually about 10 seconds.
Fair enough.
You know it from the beginning. I mean, it just, you just feel it. You just feel it's right or not. And sometimes it's not right and you can work on it and it gets to work eventually. But usually the people I usually work with, it's like love at first sight. It's good. It's right, and it fits, and you can do something.
Excellent, excellent. One of these days, and maybe I'm being a cockeyed optimist here, but one of these days, musicians are going to be able to get back on the road and play shows. Sure. When I listen to the Fractal guitar material, it doesn't strike me as the kind of stuff that you play note for note once you're on stage. What's the mindset going to be should you bring that to a live setting?
Well, like you said, it's not note for note at all. It's very open. It's like an open space, and probably if we would do live gigs with that material, it would be some kind of organization. Like we would say, okay, first this guy starts soloing, and then we'll play this theme, and then we'll do that part, and then the other guy will do the soloing, and it will be like a loose kind of arrangement, not completely free. It wouldn't be, okay, let's just go on stage and play something. It would be, the drummer and the bass player would know which groove is going on and which would know when approximately to change and stuff like that. It would be loosely organized, but with a clear concept.
Nice. Any idea how many people you would need on stage to pull this material off?
Yeah, I have thought about it, and it'd probably be about 6-7 people, that range.
That would be a good sized group.
Yeah.
That's a lot of, I was going to say that's a lot of notes flying around, but that's not always the case, is it? It's more like that's a lot of notes with soundscapes flying about.
Yes, yeah. And the people I play with are very, they're not so, they're not the typical soloists who will fill the space. And so they're people who listen carefully and play what's needed and can also not play. So I think Fractal guitar has always been a very social thing. It's not an egoistic solo show of speed and technique. It's more musical conversation between people. Right. And between I find very mature people who can listen to each other and who leave each other space and respect each other also. That's also a very nice thing. I mean, nobody's pulling a show off. It's always together we want to create something.
Right. And listening some people just don't grasp. Listening is probably one of the most important things about being in a band.
It is. It is. Definitely.
Right. I had another question in this vein, and I just lost it. It'll come back to me. Okay. I sit and I listen to this stuff. There it is. And I say to myself, when I introduce this kind of music to people, and in a way it's almost information overload. There's so much coming at them. I've always told people to grab hold of a particular element, doesn't matter what, within the context of the song, hang on to that, and then let the music build around that. For example, Urban Nightscape, that bass line just slays me. I don't know why. It just absolutely drives me wild. Do you have a similar mindset when you come on stage, or what are you thinking when you interact with other people?
Do you mean, do I concentrate on certain things first?
Yeah, there's got to be a different mindset as a musician, so are you trying to create your own element for people to wrap around, or are you bouncing off what somebody else is doing?
Interesting question. I usually tend to listen to the whole thing. I mean, I'm not a very analytical listener. Probably, for me, the whole thing has a feeling that has to be right. That's something I immediately recognize or know that it's not the case. It's just the whole atmosphere. The atmosphere is very important, and the rhythm is very important. The interaction between drums and the players, of the guitar players and bass player, that the interaction between the rhythms has to be right. There has to have the right feeling. That's very important for me. I can't live with something which doesn't interlock correctly.
Makes sense. I can't let it go unsaid that your other career is you teach mathematics, correct?
Right. Yep.
And that really suits what you do musically. Is that
in a way, yeah, in a way, but in a way also not, because I usually don't tell people that I'm a mathematician, because most people, it turns them off, frankly.
Right.
Most people, if they hear math, they say, "Oh, I hate math," and that's brainy, and that's the opposite of that what I want. But I feel, or for me, it's important that my music has both elements. It has the intellectual element and also the gut element, and I've always been it was always very important for me that music has both for me. Like I don't want to do punk, where they just have, 3 chords and
right.
pure energy. I mean, I admire the energy, but that it's just not enough information for me musically.
Right.
So I enjoy having both. I need both elements for me, for music to really work well.
So in some ways, you're looking for just as much soul as anybody coming out of Memphis or what have you, but just from a slightly different angle.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Makes sense. Well, we're hopeful about the live performances in the coming year. It's early, we'll just have to see. But you have other things. You have other irons in the fire. What else is going on in your world?
Okay, let me see. There's been a lot going on. One thing that I've been doing, I did mainly, we started in May 2020, I think. That was a project which was initiated by Giacomo Bruzzo from Rare Noise Records.
Right.
He has he told me about a German keyboard player or German synthesizer player called Jan Peter Schwalm. And Peter also played with Eno for a while. Maybe you know the records that Schwalm and Eno records, Drawn from Life is the main album that they did. And Giacomo set up a meeting between Peter and me, and we talked about doing a project together. And he mentioned that he would like his favorite guitarist, that was Eivind Arseth from Norway. He wanted him to play in this project, and I wanted Sonar's drummer, Manuel Pasquinelli, to play. And Peter also wanted Tim Harris from London to play bass.
Oh, yeah. Great player.
So it's a quintet. It's 5 people. It's Peter, me, Eivind, Tim, and Manuel. And it's a project that we originally wanted to meet in person and play in the studio together, record together. And we booked 4 days at the studio. That would have been last April. But it didn't work out because of COVID. So we had to say, okay, let's do the pieces via internet. So Peter and I composed some pieces. We sent them to Eivind and to Tim, and they played their parts. And then I went to the studio with Manuel and laid the drums. So it's an album that's going to be out in April. It's called Trans-Neptunian Planets.
Ooh.
And it's something very different, I think. It's very much also Peter's music, which I really love. And there's tracks which I think you'll recognize are more from my world, and some tracks which are more from his world. And it's all glued together by Eivind, who's really playing so fantastically on this record. We sent him all the tracks, and he would do the most fantastic things. So I'm really looking forward to that coming out. That's April. Then I've been doing a classical music album with a friend I have from Rome called Fabio Anile. He also played on Fractal guitar. He's an excellent composer, and he sent me one of his string quartets, which I really, really loved. And I was composing also 2 or 3 new pieces at the time when he sent me that. So we said, why don't we do an album together? Fabio and me. He composed 3 pieces. I composed 4 pieces. And they are for strings and piano. So that's 2 pieces are piano quintets. So that means piano plus string quartet. And there's also 3 quartets and 1 sextet. That's a piano with a string quartet and an added viola. So I think it's a very beautiful album that we did together, which is just now being finished. And we're going to look for a label, but I don't know yet when it will be released. So we'll have to see about that.
Understood.
Okay.
Oh, keep going.
I can go for a long time.
Hey, I got nothing.
There's also a new record. I won't tell you who's playing on it, but you'll know about it soon. It's a record with that we also did in lockdown, and it's a sextet of 6 people playing, and it's also it sort of grew out of the Fractal guitar thing. Like I said, I was thinking about performing Fractal guitar live, and I thought who could be in that band. So that started a thinking process, which eventually led to this project, which is finished, not quite finished. There's some tracks being made right now, but it will be finished soon. And Marcus Reuter will mix it, and hopefully it will be out in autumn, probably. Then.
Excellent. So much to look forward to. I can hardly wait.
Yeah.
Let's do a little thing I like to call my favorites, in which I ask my favorite musicians on their instruments who their favorite musicians are on the same instrument. So your favorite guitarist, who comes to mind, and why?
Okay, let me think. Well, it's easy to answer for me, but I'm thinking back. The first guitarist who I really liked and tried to copy as well. I learned a lot of his pieces was the Yes guitarist, Steve Howe. I was 13 years old, and I heard all these Yes pieces, which sounded crazily good. So I wanted to learn how they were played. So I learned a lot to play his pieces, his solo pieces as well, Mood for a Day and the Clap and stuff like that. But the guitarist who really blew my mind was Robert Fripp in the 70s.
Right.
Like the Lark's Tongues and Starless and Bible Black, this era. I think this is this was so powerful, and so it really blew my mind as a teenager. I was really crazy about that stuff. And I sort of lost the connection a little bit. I think what he did in the 70s, Robert Fripp, was phenomenal. And I still think so. If I listen to something today, it's so special and it's so unique and it's so strong and it's wonderful, really. And eventually I lost a little bit interest. I respect him immensely, but the stuff that he did later with guitar synths, and I didn't really appreciate that much. I thought it was much more interesting what he did in the 70s. And so that was around that time that Robert Fripp was my main influence. And later, let me see, David Thorne was a very strong influence in the 80s, especially with his Cloud About Mercury band. And that eventually led to me asking David to play with Sonar. And now I would say Eivind Arset is one of the guitarists who really impresses me. The way he worked with sounds, like he's not maybe a flashy player who plays fast runs and everything, but he's a player who invents his completely own sound worlds, and the way he works with effects is absolutely amazing for me. So I would say he's one of my favorites now at this time.
Excellent. And you reach a certain stage where you realize speed doesn't mean a whole lot.
Doesn't mean a lot. It's nice to have, but it's not essential.
Makes sense. Stephan, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to me.
Sure.
It's a real joy. I look forward to hearing the studio material in the future. And I'm in Chicago now, so if everybody goes to Chicago when you get on the road, I'm hoping to see you here soon. Yeah,
Sonar was in Chicago a few years ago, but you weren't. I don't think you were there then.
No, I wasn't. I hadn't. Yeah. I either hadn't quite heard of you yet, or I hadn't. Something went haywire, but we're going to fix that because I'm going to be sitting right in front of you when you come here the next time. I guarantee you.
Great.
Thanks again. I hope everything levels itself out, and we'll see you out here soon.
Okay. Thank you very much. See you. Bye, Sid.